Welcome back to the $1 Million Tipping Point podcast. Today on the show, we have Molly Ruland, and she is here to tell us a little bit about her podcasting business, which is really exciting because obviously this is a podcast. What I also hope to talk about with her is how she transitioned from working in the U.S. to Costa Rica, because yes, she is currently, if you watch us on YouTube, you'll see this beautiful foliage in the background. She is in Costa Rica working, and she's got 4 dogs too, which is really cool. We're going to talk a little bit about managing a remote team and, again, hopefully how podcasting can help grow your business. So if you're thinking about podcasting and you're on the fence about how can it help your business, this is a good episode to listen to. So Molly Ruland is the CEO and founder of Heartcast Media, a branded podcast production agency focused on content creation for founders, CEOs, coaches, and agencies. Molly specializes in producing high-quality branded video content for businesses that want to generate revenue and create strategic relationships through podcasting. She believes that listening is the revolution and currently lives in Costa Rica, like we mentioned, next to a volcano, daring, with her 4 dogs, and she runs her global business remotely. For our audience, don't forget that these guests give exclusive content to you guys on growing your business, and you can only get that if you sign up for the Tipping Jar of Wisdom newsletter. So all of this and more on starting and growing your business can be found on my website, corporate2contract.com, and that's the number 2. So Molly, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. That was a great intro. I love it.
Was it? I've been working on it for so long because it used to be so long. And then I had an audit because I would do like my spiel, like go to corporate to contract, sign up for the newsletter. Then I do their bio. And it was like so long that like I got a lot of feedback that it had to be shortened. So I've been working on it so hard. I've been trying to be like, here's what we're going to cover. Here's a little info about them. And here's where you go to find me.
I love it.
I'm very flattered that you said it was better. So tell us a little bit about Heartcast Media and what you do with podcasts and how you help people with their own podcasts, getting them up and running, maybe marketing it, et cetera.
Sure thing. So I've been in multimedia for 20 plus years. So I've been doing this a really long time, but started podcasting in 2014, I believe, is when officially we started. But we formed the company in 2019. I had another business, but our primary objective is branded podcasting. So podcasting for business development. So it's a little bit different of a method, like where we don't care about downloads. We're more interested in the relationship. So interviewing 10 people you want to do business with, and using it as a lead generation source and not being as concerned with how many people listen to the episode, but the relationship that you forged while you recorded it. So it's a slightly different model than most people, but for founders and business owners and agencies or VC companies that have portfolio companies that need, 10 episodes and 10 warm leads and to get booked on some podcasts and spend a couple months generating content for the year. That's really kind of our lane, more so than somebody who kind of wants to start a podcast for the fun of it,
Yeah, there's a big difference. I was on Reddit once and someone was a podcast producer, wanted to be a podcast producer, editor or something. And they were like, how do I get paid for this? It seems like there's no way I can get paid for this. And I was like, whoa. Hold on. No, you're looking at hobbyists. Like there's a difference. There's like podcast hobbyists. And I have a personal podcast as well that I probably update every month to month and a half. It's not very active. And then we have my business podcast, which I'm very active in. And there's a difference, like you said, that's not the hobbyists. It's really people who are trying to be intentional about it. Can you give us an example of a story that of a client that you worked with that just kind of blew you away with the results they got?
Yeah, sure. I mean, all of our clients have seen results in some way. So some of our clients are, like we did a podcast for NATO, and that was really successful with kind of pushing out a new agenda of like ways to reimagine the global landscape. And that was really huge for them. Tons of downloads. We produce all the podcasts for Atlantic Council, which is a think tank that's been around since the 70s. So we're producing multiple conversations on like women in China and the China, like Saudi relationship and, all kinds of global content, which is really interesting. And then from a personal, founder CEOs, definitely, taking the method of interviewing 10 people you want to do business with, being really intentional about it. That always works. Because it's a gift of reciprocity. So, for example, I have a client who was in the food packaging industry. And so I was like, why don't you interview people that work with those big companies? Like maybe you can't get to the CFO of Starbucks or whatever, but you can get to the person that organizes the convention every year and is in contact with the CFO of every single company. And I bet she never gets interviewed, right? And so just taking a different strategy on it that way, because, you know, the best recommendation you can get is an in-house recommendation. I always try to remind people, like, if you're in an office, you know, it's not the boss deciding where you're ordering lunch, it's the receptionist. So if you're a local company that does catering, you should be, you know, schmoozing the receptionist, because she's ultimately going to be the one to order lunch. So it can be the same thing with podcasting. So instead of interviewing somebody who's really famous and popular on LinkedIn, or interviewing the CEO of the company you want to do business with, why don't you interview somebody at a lower rank in there and get them to love you, and then they're going to advocate on the inside for you. So taking that approach definitely, you know, is very, very effective.
Yeah, I would say for sure. And it's interesting. I definitely interview people on my podcast that I have wanted to work with, not really the opposite, because generally I don't interview people on my podcast that want to work with me. But I do that. But the opposite happens sometimes. I'll interview someone and I'll say, like, actually, kind of want to get your information. I want to chat. Can you let me know more about this? And then to your point about the inside being good, like I get my podcast guests from a variety of sources. I think we met on one of the matching sources. But I had 2 guests who put me in touch with other guests, like, and I was booked out through the year from the amount that they gave me. Like sometimes people will, you know, like give 1 or 2 guests as like a referral, but these people gave like 10 each or 10 or 20 each. And it was amazing. So it really is true that like the inside can help. So tell us, you said you mentioned you had a business before this one, before the Heartcast Media. What was that? And what did it look like really for you?
So I was based in Washington, D.C., and we supported community through art, music, and culture. So I managed 160 artists. I had a 3-story building. I built multiple recording studios and live music stages and podcast studio. And we really supported community, like I said. So we were booking local artists and recording artists and doing work with the DC government, you know, but primarily very like renegade and kind of underground grassroots stuff, but very large, doing, you know, thousands of people at events and things like that. So I've been in marketing and branding and content creation since, you know, 2002, I think, is the first time I took a swing at it all. So podcasting is just sort of the next wave of that. But it's an interesting note, because I ran that company for 19 years and everybody in DC knew that company, and I was wildly successful, but I wasn't, because it wasn't sustainable. And if it was a boulder that I was pushing uphill constantly, and the second I even took a break to wipe the sweat off my brow, that thing was going to roll back on me. So it looked successful, but it was not. And it was because I didn't understand business and I constantly devalued myself. And so it was a real catalyst to closing that business and opening a new business and taking everything that I've learned and implementing that, because I was pouring from an empty cup and nobody noticed. And I was gonna die straight up if I didn't make changes. And, you know, for a lot of people, that could be really hard with a 19-year-old business. You have a lot of ego associated to that. But for me, it was like when I had that realization, and I'll never forget, I was listening to a podcast, Tom Bilyeu, and it just hit me. And I said, I don't have to do this anymore. And it was like the most freeing thought I've ever had in my whole life. It was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this anymore. Like, holy crap, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this anymore. And I closed the company and I reverse Oprah'd my life. I was like, you got to go and you got to go. And I'm not responsible for anybody, you know? And I enabled a lot of people. I built this thing and I was the only one putting into it, you know? And so I just made the decision that I wasn't going to do that anymore. And then that's when I formed Heartcast Media and really implemented all the mistakes that I made to create a better business.
Yeah, I want to explore that a little bit. What do you think is the primary difference when you say, you know, you're pushing up this boulder up the hill, and it was all on you? How have you changed then with Heartcast Media? Because it sounds like you also had a team with your previous company, right? So then what changed specifically?
I mean, I had team members that were like ride or die. They would do anything and we did amazing stuff together. But what changed was me. I was a terrible leader. I made so many mistakes. I didn't know how to make money. If you're good at content and marketing and branding and or community organizing, that doesn't mean that you're good at business, right? Like just because you have an idea that could get really big doesn't mean you're a good leader. Like those things are not synonymous, right? And so, and in fact, as I go on this journey of learning about myself, it's like there's a lot of things about that I'm really not good at, right? And that's okay. So I just kind of made that decision to educate myself. And really what happened is I formed Heartcast Media with a friend of mine who had the project management, the PMP license and the MBA and all that. She was the business person and I was the content, I was the intellectual property, I had the equipment, I had the relationships. And she lasted 6 weeks into the business and was like, I'm working full time. I don't have time for this. I'm like, oh, no. Being in a startup means you work 80 hours a week. It's not cute. It's not, you don't have a Facebook office with an espresso machine in the lobby. Like we are grinding this thing out. And she respectfully declined. And so there I was again, alone with a new business, with a new lease in the Washington Post building and no help. And so I thought, well, I have a choice, I can go left or I can go right. And so what I decided to do is educate myself. And I read 135 books on business development in 3 years. So over the course of 4 years, but really in the last year, I've been rereading books instead of reading more books. And I filled in all the gaps. And every time I would read something and I'd go, oh God, I did that. Oh, Jesus. I would have to stop books and call people and apologize. Like I was a terrible leader and I'm so sorry, I am so sorry. And everybody was like, Molly, it's cool. But it was hard to listen to those things and just, God, that's exactly where I got it wrong. I did the opposite. I made every single mistake, but I educated myself and then took all of that and implemented it into this business, which is now, very successful.
Okay. So what do you think is, if you could distill it down, what is the most important way that your management or leadership style has changed over the past, let's say, 6 or 7 years?
I mean, from a very high level summary, like being less reactive but baseline is leadership. Everything is leadership. Like I read the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell once a year, and every year I still cringe. I'm like, God, I thought I was getting this better, and I still find ways where I'm not, right? So you don't know what you don't know. And leadership is not something that's, people are talking about it more, but people talk about thought leadership, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. Well, that thought leadership is more like being an expert kind of in a subject. It's kind of how I look at it. And then like you talk about that subject a lot, and then you're a thought leadership. Like the actual leadership of employees or contractors or teams, it's just, or running a company is different.
It's very different, right? So just learning, right? And I'm constantly learning. I listened to an interview the other day with Gina Malakan Long. She's one of my clients. She was on a podcast, and I was like, God, this is so good. I was taking notes, and I emailed her like a fangirl. But she was saying how everybody communicates differently, and how do you know how your employees communicate? Are they visual? Are they audible? Are they written? Do they like praise? Do they not like praise? And I was like, God, once again, don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's such a good point. You mentioned the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. What are some other books that you read in those 130 that really stand out to you that you can recommend?
Sure. The 4-hour work week changed my life, right? That's when I was like, oh, wait a minute. I could live in Costa Rica, or I could work smarter, not harder. So that, even though it's a very old book, it's still very relevant. The 21 Irrefutable Laws, 10 million or $100 million offers by Alex Hormozy. I know he's getting a lot of flack right now, but I think the dude's genius. The One-Page Marketing Plan by Alan Dibb is also a very old book, but it is just gold. It is a timeless book. And then, of course, all the Tim Ferriss books like Tribe of Mentors and the other one, Titans, whatever it is. So, there's so many good books out there, honestly, and then even the ones that I read that I didn't like I read the Grant Cardone book, and I'm like, God, if I hear that guy say 10X one more time, I'm going to throw myself out a window. But there was still a moment or two in listening to that book where I was like, So it was worth it, right? If you get one gem out of a book, it was worth it, right? So I would say though, honestly, reading any book, right? Like there's so much information on the internet, but it's not verified and it's moving so fast. And so we've all become like kind of dumb and our attention spans are really short. And so when I started listening to books on Audible, I would have to rewind it constantly. I'd be like, God, I just zoned off again. God, I zoned off again. I mean, I was like, what is wrong with me? And I was really starting to question, like, what has the world done to my brain? Because it's not there anymore. And so it's actually in the process of listening to these books actively. I have lengthened my attention span, my mental elasticity. I have learned so much. I can recall these things in a moment, and they have 100% changed my business. So, I think my best advice is don't read it. If you don't like it, like I try to listen to the Simon Sinek, like, you know your why, but I got 5 minutes into it. I was like, oh, shut up, and I turned it off. And I'm not going to listen to it. Like, if you don't like a book, if you don't like what they're saying, don't listen to it. It's not meant to be a chore. It's not like reading War and Peace. You're like, oh, it took me 4 months, but I finally did it. Throw that thing in the
Not
trash,
like
man.
high school required reading.
Yeah,
Right.
move on. Find something that
Find
does
someone that
resonate
like
with you.
matches what you're looking for and like engages you. Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. So you talked about obviously the 4-hour work week. That's a big one by Tim Ferriss. It's kind of like what put him on the map. And you talked about like that kind of motivated you to move to Costa Rica. So tell us about that move and like taking your business from the US to Costa Rica and what the differences have been and how you've learned to adapt to a different country.
For sure. Well, and this was a really important lesson because we had a very brick and mortar business. We were in Washington, D.C. with a full-on recording studio when the pandemic hit, right? So what do you do when the city's locked down and you have a very brick and mortar business? And so we closed our lease and we went fully remote. Me and Matt, my engineer, took a month off and we regrouped and we came back and we just went fully remote because business development still needs to happen even in a pandemic. People needed us more than ever because we weren't producing podcasts about true crime. We're producing podcasts that generate business revenue, right? So they still needed us. So we went fully remote and grew the business 200% in 2020 by getting rid of our physical spaces, by getting better at Zoom. We were the first ones to get on Riverside, not the first ones, but, we were constantly looking for ways to adapt. We send our clients microphones, we make it as easy as possible to go remote. But I didn't give up. And a lot of people were talking about pivot. And it's like, oh, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Like, it's not about pivoting. It's about like adjusting to this, how you need to serve your clients now. It's not like, oh, well, I was producing podcasts, but now I'm going to do documentaries. It's like, ooh, slow down. You don't need to change your whole business model. You just need to think about who you're serving and how you can really benefit them. And then the answer is a lot more clear. So, we grew the business considerably. I had moved out of Washington, D.C. at that point and was working remotely, and my team had grown quite a bit and they were all over the world. And I just thought, well, what's holding me back, right? Like, why wait until retirement to move to Costa Rica? Like, why not go now? Because the real rub is, and I see it all the time here, where people build this dream up of, I'm going to move to Costa Rica, and it's going to be great. I'm going to take my retirement. I'm going to come here and I'm going to buy the first house I see. And they last 3 years maximum and they're back to the States because they can't adjust to living in a developing country. Like power goes out all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's not America. We don't have Amazon. And so I thought to myself, well, why build this dream of something that I want? Because what if I don't actually want it? So I thought, well, let me just go to Costa Rica now and see if it's someplace I really want to be. I'm working remotely anyway. I might as well go. And that was 3 years ago now. So we're still a US based business. We still are doing live town halls for the DC mayor and working on websites for the DC government. And we're still very DC based. I just happen to live, next to a volcano.
And so do you think you're going to stay there for a while?
For sure.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. And what made you decide to get 4 dogs?
Well, they just show up. They come with the par for the course with Costa Rica. If you stay still too long, you end up with dogs. But I came with one, and it's very sad. I'm going to put her. She's going to be put to sleep tonight. She's 21 years old. I know. So after
21.
I know the girl has had a good run, and today is her day. So
I just put my
know.
dog to sleep like 3 weeks ago. So I
Oh,
know it's hard. It's hard.
Jesus. Oh
Yeah.
God. I've been ready for months. I'm like, girl, you were annoying me. Your time has come. You had a good run, but now that it's actually happening, I'm crying, ugly crying. As soon as we get off this call, I'll be crying, I'm sure. But she I brought with me, and then the other three, there's so many stray dogs and they just show up. And so the three are puppies. And then the other one's 21. But they might make life.
21. My God, that's so old for a dog. Wow. That's incredible though. Like incredible. Oh, my heart is with you.
Thank
Um,
you.
so now I'm having trouble getting back to
I know. I'm sorry. I was like, don't talk about the dog on the podcast. Don't talk about the dog.
Hey, it's okay. It's therapeutic. So you said your team was remote. It's always been remote. Talk to me a little bit about managing a remote team. I mean, you're obviously very big into leadership and trying to improve yourself, and also just management for our audience who's thinking of hiring remote. And are they contractors or employees?
Well, they're technically contractors because they're all over the world, but they're employees. They get paid every Friday with the same amount of money.
Okay.
I'm not into the whole like Fiverr contractor part-time employee thing, because on a human level, right? If we want to pay people a living wage, if you're only paying somebody $200 for 20 hours a week, that means they got to find the rest of it someplace else,
Yeah. So
And
they'll
so
have
that,
I work with a lot of freelancers, and a lot of them have multiple clients. Yeah.
and that's not really quality of life. You know what I mean? So it's like, for me, I only hired people when I was ready to bring them in full time.
I think it depends on like your business, because I've interviewed a lot of women, and a lot of them have contractors who are part-time and who work part-time. So I think it matters a lot on like your leadership style, your goals for your business. And then you work off of that, because I do also know people who had contractors and decided to move to employees. And I'm people who had employees and decided to move to contractors because they were like, I don't want to have someone full-time anymore. So it definitely changes for each business. What's some tips and advice you can give for managing a remote team?
I mean, I think it's a constant journey. You definitely have to adjust your time zones a little bit, but you can use them to your advantage instead of using it as a disadvantage. So, like, if you wait until Monday morning to tell the team what needs to be done, you've missed a whole day. You need to do that on Sunday night, or you need to do it on Friday before you log out. You know what I mean? Because their Monday morning is Sunday night. So if I wait until Monday morning, it's their Monday night. I just missed a whole day. Right. And so you just have to you just got to be a step ahead of everybody. And then when you get there, then it's really easy, because like Friday before I log out, which I never do, I always log in on Sunday, but that's fine. I could just say, hey, here's the priorities for the week. This is what I'd like you to focus on. And then when I wake up on Monday, there's already a bunch of progress has been made. Everything that I asked for is done. Everybody's started off the week in a great place. And it took me 20 minutes. Right. But if I'm, or if I message them in the morning and I expect a response, I'm not going to get one because it's 2 a.m.
Right. If they're on like so you're saying like if they're on the Pacific area, like Asia.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So, and my team is all over the world. Like Matt, my engineer, he's based in DC. I'm in Costa Rica. We're in Dubai, Philippines,
Okay.
Vietnam. So we're really like all over the world. But it works really well for us. Like, we don't really mind. We do a lot of communication on Slack and Trello. I built really great systems on Trello, lots of automations and systems, so everybody knows how to work, how to communicate. I think that's the real answer, is building good systems. So like whatever it is, but having a system.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the key to all business success, but especially communicating with people all over. It's like, we don't have meetings because I'm not going to ask them to log in at 7 p.m. And I don't want to log in at 6 a.m. for a meeting either. Thank you very much.
No, I know.
So, we have to have very open channels of communication, like together and separate. And all of that was set up. And then expectations. Our business is very systemized. We do the same thing every single time. Doesn't matter what the podcast it was. We do the same thing. 3 graphics, two little, you know what I'm saying? Like it's an assembly line. So there's not a lot of questions. It's not like, oh, this one's custom and this one does this different and this guy's doing it's like, nope, we do the same thing for everybody because we know it works. And it'll look different based on your company, but the system is the same. It's very much an assembly line,
Did you, in your 130 books, did you read the book, The E-Myth Revisited?
No.
Michael someone? I mean, you already have it down, but he talks about when you're growing a team or growing, you should try to make it as much of an assembly line as possible so that like if this person leaves for no reason, you don't know where they went, the next person come in and say, this is what happens and this is what happens, this is what happens. And he also advocated, which I really liked, building out an org chart and job descriptions and responsibilities before you've even hired those people. And I was like, oh, I loved that. Something I've done.
Which is really good. I'm in a mastermind with a friend who also owns a podcast business, and he was showing me this like tool he was using with an org chart like that. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Cause I haven't done that, but I built the systems. Like we have a graphic designer, a video editor, an audio editor. Like a lot of podcast companies are like, you have these 5 shows and this editor is doing these 5 shows. Like with us, it's like John does all the video and Matt does all the audio. So it's like, it literally, I used to say Henry Ford would be proud, but I don't think I want to make him proud anymore. Apparently that guy wasn't so great, but it's a great assembly line for sure. So it works really well because everybody knows what their job is, right? And if a graphic is laid, it's like everybody's looking at little John like, where's it at? You know what I mean?
Everyone knows. Yep.
It's really simple.
What do you think was the most important step or action item you took to grow your business and to getting to 7 figures?
I mean, definitely reading all those books, and in reading all those books, the greatest takeaway that I got, and I say this all the time, is take the straightest path to the money.
I've never heard that one from interviewing people. Take the straightest path to the money. Okay. Speaking of money then, how do you balance spending and making money in your business? How do you know when, I mean, have you ever had months in the red, and how did you handle that? How do you deal with knowing how much to spend per month and how much to keep?
I just like to close my eyes and hope for the best most of the time, if I'm being really honest. But I mean, we've definitely have had, I mean, you know, I can sugarcoat it, pretend like I know everything, but I definitely don't. I mean, I am very much aware of our numbers, right? Like I do a little coaching and speaking, and the first thing I always say is like, know your numbers. Like what do things cost you? And so I know my numbers at all times, but cash flow is something I think every business struggles with, you know, because we'll have months where we're doing, you know, a 50K contract, and then the next month it's like a little quieter, right? So it's like you have to kind of balance it out. A lot of it has been, I try not to hire until we have a real need, you know, and then I'll hire accordingly, but not until we've justified that expense completely. So, being in the red, we definitely have. I made a bad hire last year, a salesperson, and I took my foot off the gas and I made the assumption they were doing a good job, and that was 100% my fault. I take full responsibility for it, but that person was not doing a good job and almost bankrupted the company last year or this year. And it was very, very difficult because the sales pipeline came to a complete stop, and it was too late by the time I realized it. And so I had to put in, 15-hour days for a lot of months to rebuild everything back up. And so there was quite a few months where things were in the red, but it was a good lesson. It was another good lesson in leadership to not
back off too much or not. Yeah. I've definitely had moments like that too, where because I'm very much the type of person that I assume when you come into it, you're going to know what you do, and you need to be trained, but you don't need to be micromanaged or have me hovering over your shoulder. It's not always the case. That's all I'm going to say.
No. And at the end of the day, it's our fault, right? It's our fault. Like like I could tell you 10 things right now that person did that are like just terrible, but it doesn't matter. It's my fault for not seeing it sooner. Right. And so, but what it did show me is that I have the best freaking team in the world because they stayed with me. They stayed with me when things got really, really rough.
Did you have to so how did you tell them? How did they know? I mean, I'm assuming you must have told them. So then how did you approach that?
I was just really honest with everybody. I mean, they all know how hard I work. Like they see me messaging them on Slack when they're going to bed and when they're waking up, right? I'm not just somebody who's like on my boat, like giving orders. I don't even have a boat, first of all, but like I'm in the trenches with them, right? And they see everything that I'm doing, and I'm just very transparent about it. I was like, here's what's going on. Mm-hmm. This is what's happening. Giving them updates. Hey, this is good news. This is not so good. And I'm just being very transparent, and gave everybody an opportunity to walk away if that's what they wanted to do, and nobody did. And so when we actually got over that hurdle and we, now we're having record revenue numbers again, we're in better position than we were because of all the work that we've done. But now that I have, time to like kind of process all that, it's like, wow, man, like how fortunate am I to have people who stuck with me? Because if they had left, it would have been a wrap.
So how do you think you inspired that loyalty?
I don't know. Maybe by being authentic and really trying, and they see that I put them first a lot, I don't know. Luck,
No.
good leadership. I hope. I don't know. I was actually on a podcast with my engineer and somebody asked him, what's it like working with Molly? And I was kind of like, oh God, what's he going to say? Like, this is so awkward because I'm sitting right here, and it was really humbling. I was like, don't cry on the podcast. Cause it was so nice to hear, feedback, on how you're getting things done. Cause I'm certainly imperfect. I am not, the picture of business leadership by any means, but I'm trying.
Yeah. When you are marketing yourself, how do you try to stand out from competitors? Or not yourself, but your business?
Well, I think we kind of naturally do that because our method is so different about like interviewing people you want to do business with and creating really high quality content. And then the second wave is SEO and the third wave is the social proof. And when you talk to business owners who understand making money, that resonates with them, where the people who are saying, do 100 episodes, make audiograms, post 3 times a week, the average founder or CEO is going, why the hell would I do that? You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. How's that going to make me money? Like, everybody's saying I should have a podcast. Everybody's saying this, but I don't understand like where do these dots connect? So typically when I get in front of people and I do public speaking, that's where I get a majority of my clients. Cause I tend to I've been around a long time. I'm 47, right? It took a long time to bake this cake. I am who I am. And so when people see me speak, I think some of them are like, I'm going to pray for her. And then other people are like, I love her. I want to work with her. And so I find my people that way. And that's typically how, a lot of my clients have come to me. But I think just being authentic and speak about what you know. Don't try to be something that you're not. Like, I know marketing, I know branding, I know content creation, I know podcasting. I'm not going to sit here and talk about things I don't know about.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the hire you made that almost bankrupted you. Have you made any other mistakes while growing your business that have stood out that you've learned from?
That I honestly, there's like little mistakes every single day for sure, but that was the biggest one. That was the biggest one because it was such a, in retrospect, it's like, I have this goal for the company, which is why I was interested in coming on your podcast, this revenue goal. Like, I've always built a company to sell it, to hit a certain revenue mark, and then sell the business for a certain number. And so once I was able to like resurrect our pipeline and get back to business, then I had that moment of looking back and going, man, I hope I'm not starting from year 1 again. Like that hire was like, we were cranking along for 3 years, you know what I mean? And that hire almost set us back. Now, luckily, because the work I did, we're going to actually close out with higher revenue numbers this year than last year, which is like a full-on miracle and a testament to how many hours I put in the last 6-7 months, right? But to sit and think, God, all the work I did for 3 years, I might have to start at year 1 again because of that hire. Like, God, what a gut punch that was. So you best believe I'm going to be a lot more careful about hiring anybody ever again. And I will never not do sales for the company, and the main reason why is like, I love my clients. I legitimately love them. I love the process of getting to know them, showing how a podcast can help their business, understanding their problems, onboarding them, helping with the strategy. I want to see them win. I don't want to remove myself from that process. I enjoy it. It's the best part of the whole thing. I don't know why I took myself out of that process, So,
I think people take themselves out of that process because that's what they hear the next step is, right? Like, well, take the sales part out of the process so you can focus more on like the bigger vision of the business. But I interviewed someone on the podcast for our listeners. If you want to go back and listen, her name was Sarah Milby. And we'll put that in the show notes too. She actually was very similar. She loves doing sales. She loves doing the potential clients, and she had some churn with salespeople too. And she just was always like, but I just love it. So what she ended up doing actually was like hiring someone to, I think, at the beginning stages, like getting companies that are like interested, but she does like the final sales calls and stuff. I don't know if she still does that, but like that is what she would do so that she could be part of that energizing part for her. It was energizing for her. Yeah.
Because it's exciting. Like, I love it when I'm like, okay, tell me your business. What are your struggles? What are you trying to do? And I'm like, okay, like I love that stuff. I genuinely enjoy it. And so, and I know what we do works, right? So why would I want to take, like, to me, it's not sales. I'm like, let me tell you this thing I'm excited about. And I know it could get results for you. In fact, we even have a guarantee on our offer, which is unheard of. And so I'm excited to share that. I'm excited to see them win. I'm excited to check in with them and give them feedback on their podcast. To me, that's not a laborious thing. It's like, because I like my clients.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you changed your hiring process, do you think, since you had this bad hire? Have you shifted it at all to make sure that you avoid another situation like that?
Well, I think the top management will just stay the same for a while unless somebody can really prove that they've got something to bring. I see these like, what do they call them? Fractional CFOs or whatever, where they like come in and help. But there's so much of that right now. There's like a million companies approaching me to do that it's like kind of hard to know like who's the real deal and who's not. So it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna chill on that, and we're only gonna hire anybody who like is like an assistant to the video editor, an assistant to the audio editor. And then I did hire an outside sales company. And so what they do is they generate leads, but they also close the deals. And so I'm doing that in addition to what I'm doing as like a force multiplier. So I'm getting my revenue to like where I want us to be. And then I've brought them in to see if they can close an extra 2 or 3 deals a month, then that like does a lot for our numbers, but it's not the primary sales source.
It's almost like you're still doing, obviously, the sales and the part that you love. So instead of just everything being handed off to another person like that was before, you're still doing something. You're just seeing if it works out with that company. That makes sense. So do you have any advice for our audience? Like, how can a podcast grow your business? You've mentioned it here and there, but talk to them really like, why is it such a good thing to have? How can it grow your business?
All right. This is good stuff right here. Right. So it's a 3-part situation. Number 1, business development. Number 2, SEO. Number 3, social, right? Interview 10 people you want to do business with. The secret sauce is the introduction, right? And don't read what they gave you. Do a real introduction. Go Google them, get all the information, where they went to college, where they went to high school, where they grew up, take their bio, take some of the stuff they put on LinkedIn and write an intro that is in your words, that is insanely complimentary, Molly
I was told to do that too. And it's funny because I didn't do that with yours. I kind of like, but part of what I changed in my intro, because we had talked about this earlier to go full circle, is talking about things you want to talk about. Like someone suggested that, like, what do you want to touch upon? And I listed those 3 things I wanted. So I've started to do that to kind of engage more in the beginning. So you know what you're getting into. Because I used to just be like, all right, we've got Molly Ruland, and here is all the bio, and here's all, and it's just like you lose people. But I like the idea of like writing something yourself. I didn't really think of that.
Well, and here's the thing. It's the gift of reciprocity. It's the most powerful thing on the planet, right? And if like you come on my podcast, I'm like, okay, Carrie, like Carrie's with us today, and she was born here, and her second grade teacher said this, but when she got the badge in Girl Scouts, no one knew where she was headed next. When she graduated college, and this is what her job. I mean, like you're gonna sit there and go, holy crap, man, like where did you get this information? If I do this intro that's like not just what I can find on LinkedIn, and then in this article when she was interviewed by so and so she said this, so we are excited today to, you know what I mean, and you welcome that person wholeheartedly, I'm gonna be like, dude, I'm in your pocket. What do you want? I like you. Thank you so much for valuing my time. Thank you so much for valuing the work that I've done. You're not asking me to tell my origin story, right? Like imagine if you were hooking 2 friends up, matchmaking. You wouldn't say, Tom, this is Molly. Molly, this is Tom. Talk. No, you would go, Tom is amazing. He's such a loving, caring guy. He's a good father. And Tom be sitting there going embarrassed that you're saying all this, right? But you're gassing him up and you're doing the same thing. Well, you want to do the same thing with somebody you want to do business with, right? Not ass kissing, but like a very proper introduction.
Yeah, it's very similar to like when I'm teaching in my cohorts and stuff, and we're talking about sales calls, like the prospect call. The first thing I tell them is like, research the heck out of them. Like I had one person that was like, but if I go on their LinkedIn profile, they're going to see I looked at their LinkedIn profile. I'm like, yes, that's a good thing. She was like weirded out by that. And I was like, find as much as possible that you can relate and talk to them about, right? Like, because it's the same thing with, I mean, I guess what you're saying is like, do this when you are trying to generate business through a podcast, do that same research. I actually have like a whole pages of research on you, which I barely got to even pull in, right? Like your social posts, everything. But it's like, I get that. I think that's really, really good advice. If you're doing this for business development and you're interviewing someone that might be a potential client, do that research and create an intro that's unique and not their
like
bio.
insane, right? And a lot of that is from Tom Bilyeu Impact Theory. If you listen to his older episodes from 4 years ago, and he's interviewing people like Ray Dalio, one of the smartest people on the planet, right? And he does introductions, and every single person walks out on stage and goes, "Oh my God, who was that guy you were just describing? It can't be me. Hey, can I hire you to introduce me everywhere?" Literally, episode after episode, it's every single person, the most successful people in the world sitting there saying, "Tom, thank you so much." And you can see the shift, right? They are ready for that conversation. They are grateful. They are open. They don't have to qualify themselves, and they are ready for that conversation. Then you do a great conversation, like you met them at a networking event and you're both standing at the bar or whatever your jam is, and you're just chopping it up. And you don't talk about your business. You don't talk about your clients. You just talk about the industry, and you show up and you're passionate and intelligent. 2 days later, you hit him with the ask. "Hey, Tom, it was great being on the show. I would love if I could get some time on your calendar next week. Here's my link." Of course, they're going to say yes. That's when you go for your ask. That's when that's when you create the runway for the relationship. All right. The second wave is SEO. Podcasts are a Trojan horse for SEO. All that metadata, straight to YouTube, straight to Google, right? So podcast descriptions and metadata, less adjectives, more keywords, right? Not exciting conversations around technology and the future. It's like, no, like disruptions in the supply chain due to technology issues. Like go keyword, right? Because it's going to go all over the internet. Google, put a post on your website so you get all that SEO benefit. Put it on YouTube, SEO benefit. That's just good. People pay a lot of money for SEO. This is a great way to constantly create SEO for your business and new content for your website. Easy. The third wave is social proof. Now you've got content that you can tag and say, "Hey, I hung out with Tom and we had this meeting," except don't put your face on the podcast. Don't have your face over and over again on the podcast. Put the guest on it. Again, this is specifically for business development. You could do 10 episodes of this podcast and never do it again. This is very different than a podcast for visibility. You know what I mean? It's a very different method. Hire somebody to do it really well, so you have high class graphics that look like money. If you're trying to go close a deal with somebody and it's a $5 million contract or a $1 million contract or a $10,000 contract, they're not going to want a janky graphic from Fiverr with your face on it. They're not going to put that on LinkedIn. Okay. And your content represents your business. So the third wave is that social proof where you can say, "I was hanging out with this person who's the CEO or the founder of this company," and you can talk about it on LinkedIn, and you get an opportunity to tag them, and you get to continue that conversation. But a lot of people put the focus on phase 3 instead of phase 1, and they just crank through the interviews. Who's next? The fact that you did any research on me at all makes you like different from the rest, to be honest, because most people are just like, what entrepreneur can I interview next? And I'm like, man, listen.
Really?
Everything.
I have like pages on you. I have to, because even if I don't bring it in, it dictates my mentality. Like, even if I if I don't have the time, because generally I would love to be Tim Ferriss and have 5 hours for a podcast interview, but I don't.
Exactly.
And people know that I don't, right? But the fact that like I have that, I knew you had 4 dogs, not from your bio, actually. I found that on it. And I was thinking bringing up that I put my dog to sleep recently. I was like, no, that's depressing. I won't bring that up. And then look what happens. You brought it up. So I don't know. It's just, this is good information. And it's also good, though, for people to understand. Again, Molly said this is for business development podcasting versus just to get visibility, which is what my podcast is. It's for visibility, right?
Exactly.
So there's a strong difference. And
exactly.
and versus a hobbyist podcasting, which is totally different. But even, you know what, like I'm going to be hiring soon this guy to help with podcast promotion. And he said to take my face off of the podcast image, because he was like, if they don't know who you are and you're not Tim Ferriss, we'll bring him up again. If you're not Tim Ferriss, like it's going to be hard for people to relate to that. You want to make an image that like speaks to what the podcast is. So for all of you out there who are also doing it for visibility, that was one of the recommendations he had. So I'll probably be implementing that within, gosh, I don't know, within 3 or 4 months, I think. Yeah. Well, thank you. That was so useful. So like, tell us about your business and where you see it going though. Like you mentioned that a lot of your businesses, you want to sell them. Do you want to sell this one eventually?
Yeah, that's always been the goal, is to build it to a certain point and then sell it and then continue doing like public speaking and maybe some filmmaking and things like that. But you know, really what I want to do is I want to get us to the 2 million a year mark. Hopefully in 2024. That's my goal. That's what I'm pushing for right now. You know, 4.2% of women-owned businesses make more than 1 million a year. But like 87% of women-owned businesses don't make more than $100,000 a year, right? So there's like I just made that number up, but it's pretty close and it's pretty bad. I mean, I can't remember the percentage, but of all small businesses, like a very large percentage don't make more than 100,000 a year, which is like shocking, right?
I mean, is that gross or net, or like what is that?
Gross.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's like a lot of people are like running businesses to lose money, right? Like we've all been there at some point. Like not every business is a winner, but still. So I just like the idea of like representing a little bit more and having some more, you know, visibility as a woman and business owner who's making some real money. And then I would like to take some of that and teach more women about it, because I think that we spend too much time like with the you are enough and like validating yourself and feelings. And I'm all for that. Like you are enough. You're amazing. You're a badass. You're awesome. That's great. But like, let's make money. What is the straightest path to the money? What's the straightest path to the money? Because a lot of times in women's business circles, it's like create a community on Facebook. Like that's not the straightest path to the money, my friend. I promise you that. It's manipulative and a little bit weird, and it's not a community if you're just wrangling people to sell to them. It's a group. It's not a community, right? So like let's like, and again, that's not the straightest path to the money. So I think if, you know, I know when more women make more money, the world is a better place. We invest in our communities, our employees, our families. Everybody benefits when we make more money. And so I'm selfishly would like to share what I've learned so that other women or any business owner can take it and maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I made and continue to make, quite frankly.
Okay, well that leads me into one of my favorite questions. What advice do you have for women as they grow their business or want to hit 7 figures?
Read books and don't take any more masterminds. Don't take any more things. It's not another course you need. It's the straightest path to the money. Read some books on what is your greatest thing. Read a book and then go do it. Just implement. Do it anyway. Like Mel Robbins says, you know, when you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, just do it anyway. Do it anyway. Just do it anyway, right? Straightest path to the money. Focus on making money, because there's a million courses. There's a million things that you can do that are going to get you further away from closing deals.
Yeah, there is definitely this, like with my cohorts, there's this group of people who take everything and they don't implement it. They love taking courses. They love doing cohorts. I'm like, I'm thankful. I'm grateful you are coming to learn from me. But they struggle with the implementation. Like you can tell they're just holding themselves back, or it's just like, it's just who they are. They just rather learn than actually implement. And they build it up in their head that they're going to implement, and then nothing ever happens. And
it's scary. And it's scary to put yourself out there and like ask for business. Like it is, because it feels like it's your thing, your baby. And like it is. But like the flip side is like, you know what's even less scary is like when you put yourself out there and somebody says yes and pays you a lot of money, and you're like, the heck have I been doing all this time? Why didn't I do this sooner? Or like when you finally raise your rates, you know, and you raise them pretty high, and you have that first sales call and you say that big number and the person doesn't even bat an eye, and they're like, okay.
I remember that feeling. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And you're like, God, how much money have I left on the table? How many times did I discount when no one asked me for a discount? How many times did I come up with arbitrary numbers that I thought were real that didn't even cover my expenses? And here I could have been charging 10 grand the whole time, and this guy didn't even bat an eye.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Self? Yep. Right? And so when you start realizing that there's plenty of people out there who want to pay you 10 grand for your services, and so there's no need to chase people around tables for $1,000, then it's like, it gets a little easier to say your rates And when you know your numbers and when you know how much things cost and when you know how much value your services will provide, when you know the ROI is there, it's not scary at all to say, I want 80 grand for this project. I want 50 grand for this project, because I know what you're going to get out of it, right? When you have that information, there's no feelings involved. It's not about my worth. This is math.
Mm. Good stuff. Good stuff. A lot of stuff I teach in my course, my cohort. I like it. All right. So where can we find you, Molly? This has been a great conversation. Please, we'll put it in our show notes. And if people want to connect with you and talk with you some more, let us know.
Heartcastmedia.com is the best place. And then of course you can put my name in and find me anywhere. And people like to hit me up and ask me questions about moving to Costa Rica or podcasting or whatever, but I'm happy to connect with anybody. And I would like to say, I think that life really is about relationships. Life is like your business and your personal life. The quality of both are 100% determined by the relationships that you hold in your life. And so I really appreciate coming on this podcast, because just like me having a podcast, going on other people's podcasts is also a relationship. And I have learned that like our paths didn't cross like by accident. And I'm sure that we will talk again, or maybe we'll collaborate on something, or maybe I'll send you business, or you just never know. Right. But like the quality of my life has been improved today by being on this and sharing a moment of empathy with you. So thank you for having me on here. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Honestly, it's so good for our audience. This really came about as a passion for me to just help other women learn that growing a business isn't scary. And I honestly wanted to be mentored by people, and no one wants to take time to mentor you for free. So I decided to start a podcast, and that's how this all came about, so that people could also share knowledge with me and my listeners. So what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your business by?
I mean, smarter, not harder, but that feels a little cliche, but I mean, that's really it. Smarter, not harder. It's always like problem solving. How can we make this better, easier, faster for everybody?
And what's the straightest path to the money?
Straightest path to the money.
That was what I thought you were going to say, actually.
I mean, both of them. Well, that's more like a revenue generator thing. But like in general, I want my team to feel like they're working in smart systems and stuff, right? Like it's not always like the revenue goal isn't what motivates the team, right? It's like, creating good systems. That's what gets you to the money the fastest, right?
Smarter, not harder. Well, again, thank you for joining me on this interview. And if you're part of our audience and you're listening to this and you found it informative and valuable, do us a little favor. Share the show. Tag me on Instagram at Virtually Kiri, LinkedIn. I'm the only Kiri Mohan. Share it. Oh, there's your dog in the background. Hi, dog.
Yeah. One of them. Yeah.
Share. Until next time. Oh, again, sign up for the newsletter, because Molly and I are going to be diving into some rapid fire exclusive content questions right now. So thank you so much.